The moon is not what you think it is. For 53 years, since the last Apollo astronaut left its dusty surface in 1972, we convinced ourselves we understood our closest celestial neighbour. We thought of it as a dead rock, a silent grey companion, geologically quiet and fully mapped. Then, on April 6, 2026, 4 astronauts aboard the Orion spacecraft swung around its far side, the half that permanently faces away from Earth. What they found there shattered our comfortable illusion in a matter of hours. Their names, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen, as the crew of Artemis II, they represent the first time a woman, a black astronaut, and a non-American have ever ventured beyond Earth orbit. They launched from Kennedy Space Center at 6:35 in the evening on April 1, 2026, riding atop the Space Launch System, the most powerful rocket NASA has ever successfully flown. The SLS stands 322 feet tall and generates an earth-shaking 8.8 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. It tore them out of Earth orbit in a single violent engine burn that lasted less than 5 minutes. From that moment, there was no turning back. The trajectory they followed is called a free return. This meant that even if the spacecraft's engine had failed completely after that translunar injection burn, the moon's gravity would have caught them, slung them around its far side, and sent them falling back toward Earth on its own. Apollo 13 followed this exact same trajectory in 1970 to survive that catastrophic explosion. It is the safest path to the moon, which also tells you everything you need to know about how intensely dangerous deep space remains. The safest possible option is the one that accounts for total, catastrophic engine failure. As they passed behind the moon at roughly 4,600 miles above its surface, these 4 people became the most isolated humans who have ever lived. For 40 agonizing minutes, the massive bulk of the moon itself blocked every single radio signal between their spacecraft and Earth. There was no voice from Houston, no telemetry data, no abort commands. There was nothing but absolute radio silence, and the oldest, most violently battered landscape in the entire solar system stretching out silently beneath them. Victor Glover, the mission's pilot, tried to describe what he was seeing in real time to mission control just before the communication blackout hit. He couldn't quite find the words. Not really. His exact transmission radioed down during the approach was that humans probably have not evolved to see what they were seeing, that the sheer scale and alien nature of the terrain was truly hard to describe. And when the signal finally cut out at 6:44 in the evening, Eastern Time, the 4 of them were entirely alone with it. So, what exactly did they see? To understand why the far side of the moon is so deeply unsettling, you first need to understand how drastically different it is from the side we see every night. The near side, the familiar face that points toward Earth, is covered in vast dark plains called maria. These are ancient lava flows that welled up, filled enormous impact craters, and cooled into flat basaltic seas billions of years ago. About 31% of the near side is covered in this smooth volcanic rock. It gives the moon its familiar features, the face we have drawn, photographed and mapped for centuries. The far side has almost none of it. Less than 1% of the far side features these smooth plains. Instead, the hidden hemisphere is a chaotic, towering wall of craters stacked on top of craters, stacked on top of even older craters. It looks like the universe took a hammer to it for 4 billion years and simply never stopped swinging. The lunar crust is roughly 50 kilometers thicker on the far side than on the near side, and scientists still do not fully agree on why. The leading theory involves a cataclysmic impact near the moon's south pole early in its formation. An impact so incomprehensibly violent that it sent a massive plume of heat rippling through the entire interior of the moon, shoving rare earth elements and radioactive materials exclusively toward the near side. That apocalyptic impact left behind the largest preserved crater in the entire solar system, the South Pole Aitken Basin. It stretches roughly 2,500 kilometers across and plunges up to 13 kilometers deep into the crust. If you placed this crater on a map of the United States, it would swallow everything from Texas to Virginia. The mountains thrust upward along its rim are among the tallest anywhere on the moon, reaching summit elevations of 8,500 meters. But it is what lies buried beneath the floor of this basin that is truly staggering. Something enormous is hiding in the dark. In 2018, a team led by planetary geophysicist Peter James at Baylor University combined gravity data from NASA's G-RAIL mission with topographic measurements from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. What they discovered was a terrifying mass anomaly sitting at least 300 kilometers below the surface of the basin. It is a dense, heavy blob of unknown material weighing at least 2.19 quintillion kilograms. James described the anomaly as being roughly equivalent to burying a solid pile of metal 5 times larger than the big island of Hawaii deep underground. Whatever this mass is, it is heavy enough to actually drag the basin floor downward by more than half a mile. The most likely, and perhaps most haunting, explanation is that it is the solid metallic core of the very asteroid that punched the hole in the moon in the first place, still lodged deep in the lunar mantle after 4 billion years. It sits there like a bullet fragment that a wounded body never managed to push out. The Artemis II crew became the first human beings to see the eastern edge of this colossal basin with their own eyes. They didn't see it through a robotic camera, and they didn't see it in processed data heavily filtered by an orbiter. They saw it through the windows of their own spacecraft. The Apollo astronauts never saw it. Their flight paths simply didn't take them over the right parts of the far side, and their timing didn't align with the correct solar illumination to make it visible. Artemis II's trajectory was fundamentally different by design. It swept closer and at a unique angle that exposed roughly 21% of the far side to direct sunlight from the crew's perspective. It was enough to illuminate features that no human being had ever witnessed firsthand. One of their 30 primary science targets for the flyby was the Orientale Basin, a nearly 600-mile wide impact scar that straddles the boundary between the near and far sides. It is 3.8 billion years old, and from orbit it looks like a massive multi-ringed bullseye smashed directly into the moon's western limb. The crew trained for months in Iceland and across other rugged volcanic landscapes on Earth to learn exactly how to recognize and describe complex geological features in real time. They aren't scientists by profession. They are test pilots and engineers, yet they acted as humanity's absolute best scouts. Christina Koch noted during the pass that the smaller, more recent impact craters were shockingly bright compared to the ancient weathered surface around them. She elegantly compared them to tiny pinprick holes punched in a lampshade, glowing a brilliant white against the dull, dark grey terrain of the lunar highlands. Before they crossed fully over to the far side, the crew also observed one of the near side's most baffling and beautiful features, Rhina Gamma. It is a bright, swirling pattern sprawled across the moon's surface, looking exactly like someone dragged a massive white paintbrush right across the dark volcanic rock. It has no elevation whatsoever. It is not a crater, and it is not a volcanic deposit. It is a perfectly flat optical marking that aligns precisely with a localized magnetic anomaly locked in the crust beneath it. The moon has no global magnetic field. It hasn't had one for billions of years. Yet, scattered, stubborn patches of magnetized rock still persist within its crust, acting like the ghosts of a force field that used to protect the planet. Rhina Gamma sits directly on top of one of these patches. Scientists are still fiercely debating whether this localized magnetism is acting as a shield, protecting the lighter-colored surface from solar wind weathering, or whether something else entirely is creating that bright, ghostly swirl. The Artemis II science team flagged it as a high-priority observation target, and the crew furiously photographed it as they swept past. Victor Glover became completely fixated on the Terminator line, the stark, shifting boundary between the sunlit and shadowed halves of the moon. Along that sharp boundary, craters undergo a terrifying transformation. Sunlight strikes their jagged rims at extreme, shallow angles, casting shadows so impossibly deep and pitch-black that they look like bottomless holes punched straight through to the center of the moon. Glover radioed down that the Terminator was full of a strange magic, and that the islands of illuminated light and plunging valleys looked like black holes you could easily force straight through. At the same time, Christina Koch and Jeremy Hansen were photographing the Vavilov crater, a distinct feature perched on the rim of the much older and larger Hertzsprung Basin deep on the far side. Down on Earth, the Science Evaluation Room in Houston was frantically updating the observation plan in real time, rapidly sending new guidance and coordinates to the crew based entirely on the descriptions they were radioing back. The astronauts also noted stunning color variations across the lunar surface that no robotic orbiter image had ever managed to fully capture. They saw rich shades of brown and subtle greens on the near side, and faint, eerie blue tints in certain regions of the far side. These are delicate color nuances that the dynamic range of human eyes can easily pick out, but which digital cameras tend to wash out and flatten into uniform gray. These color shifts matter immensely. They act as a visual map, revealing the mineral composition and the relative age of surface features, information that could completely rewrite our maps of the Moon's complex geological history. And that description isn't just poetry. It touches on something genuinely unsettling and deeply unresolved about the far side. In 2023, researchers detected a massive thermal anomaly buried deep beneath the far side's surface. It is a region roughly 50 kilometers wide that persistently registers about 10 degrees Celsius warmer than the surrounding crust. The most likely source is a massive buried block of granite. Granite is a rock type that is incredibly common on Earth, but almost entirely unheard of on the Moon. This is because creating granite requires abundant liquid water and active plate tectonics to form, neither of which the Moon currently has. Researchers believe this massive granite block may be the remnant of a violent volcano that went dormant 3.5 billion years ago, with its residual radioactive magma still radiating a faint, ghostly heat into the dark. Lead scientist Matt Sigler noted that the finding looks far more like what we see on Earth than anyone had ever thought possible on the Moon. And it raises a chilling question that nobody expected to be asking in the year 2026. What else is still warm down there? Then there is the mystery of the lava tubes. Radar data and high-resolution imagery heavily suggest that the Moon harbors vast underground tunnel networks. These were formed by ancient rivers of lava, leaving behind hollowed-out caves with collapsed entrance pits visible from orbit. These pits could lead to subterranean caverns large enough to swallow entire cities or shelter sprawling future lunar bases. Their true size, their global distribution, and their structural integrity remain entirely unknown. What might be trapped inside them? Could they hold pristine volcanic deposits, ancient trapped gases, or temperature conditions radically different from the brutal surface above? It is entirely speculative. Future Artemis missions may eventually brave the dark to explore them, but for now they remain sealed. The Artemis II crew also witnessed something no human being had ever seen from this distance or perspective: a total solar eclipse viewed entirely from lunar orbit. As the Orion capsule dipped behind the Moon, the Sun slid behind the massive lunar disk and vanished. For nearly 54 minutes the crew experienced totality, a duration far longer than any eclipse visible from the surface of Earth. The Sun's corona, its superheated outer atmosphere, flared out in a brilliant halo that Victor Glover described as being bright enough to vividly ring the entire Moon. Jeremy Hansen reported that the Sun was brilliantly illuminating the entire perimeter of the Moon during totality, perfectly highlighting the unique, jagged topography along the lunar limb. Ridges, mountains, and peaks were sharply silhouetted against the burning white light of the Sun's outer atmosphere. In a moment of high tension, Hansen and Reed Wiseman both noted that during the darkness of the eclipse, they spotted what appeared to be impact flashes on the lunar surface. These were momentary, violent bursts of light that could have been small meteorites striking the completely unprotected far side. Scientists in the Houston evaluation room immediately asked for more details. Both astronauts confirmed seeing at least one brief, unmistakable flash, though they couldn't definitively say how long it lasted. The Moon has no atmosphere to burn up debris. It has no magnetic field to speak of. There is absolutely nothing between its surface and the full, unbridled violence of space. Every micrometeorite, every highly charged particle of solar wind, every burst of galactic cosmic radiation hits the far side with nothing to slow it down. For centuries, amateur and professional observers on Earth have reported seeing brief flashes of light on the lunar surface. They are known as transient luminous events, ghostly flashes that appear and vanish before anyone can fully confirm them. Some are definitely meteorite impacts. Others might be electrostatic dust plumes levitating off the surface or violent outgassing from the deep interior. No one knows for sure, but the Artemis II crew may have witnessed one of these events up close during the solar eclipse. Space is violently hostile to human biology. Apollo astronauts on the near side frequently reported seeing mysterious streaks of light flashing behind their closed eyelids while trying to sleep. This was caused by high-energy particles from galactic cosmic rays literally punching right through their retinas. Those Apollo exposures were incredibly brief, lasting only a few days at most. Some of those astronauts later developed severe cataracts at unusually high rates. Most lived long lives with no obvious radiation-related cancers, which was reassuring. But it was practically meaningless from a scientific standpoint, given the tiny sample size of exactly 24 people who have ever traveled beyond Earth's magnetic protection.